Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell. You'll get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And when I'm not asking Bruce, hey, how big was Batista's? Well, you know. One of the things I like to do is help people save money. And if you're watching this video right now and you're in a 30-year loan, man, you're overpaying your single biggest bill and you may not even realize it. I want you to do a little experiment for me. Take your calculator out, multiply your monthly house payment by 360 payments. That's how many payments there are in a 30-year loan. That big scary number, that's your total of payments. You're looking at that number? You know you can do better. Keep more of your own money right now and go to savewithconrad.com. Or maybe you've got credit card debt. Man, it's not a matter of if I can save you money with that. Your average interest rate on a credit card is more than 20%. And by the way, all the interest you pay on those credit cards, it's not tax deductible. Whereas the mortgage interest, well, that is tax deductible. So if you owe this debt, it's up to you how to pay it back. Doesn't it make sense to get the cheapest rate possible and the greatest tax deduction possible? Find out how much money you can save right now for free at savewithconrad.com. You don't need perfect credit. Even scores in the 500s can be approved, and it's no cost out of pocket. But maybe best of all, we're licensed in more than 40 states. We can help more families than ever before. But how much can we save you? Find out right now for free with a quick quote from savewithconrad.com.
Well, he won a gold medal with a broken freaking neck. He's a real athlete, so give him your respect. He's got intensity, integrity, intelligence too. Oh, it's true, it's damn true. So if he ever finds you and you're chanting you suck, then he'll douse you in dairy with his big milk truck. And with one angle slam, he'll lay you out on the floor. So listen up, it's time to go. It's the Kurt Angle Show.
Hey, this is Kurt Angle, and welcome to the Kurt Angle Show. We have an awesome show planned for you today. We'll be discussing one of the most talked about storylines in pro wrestling history, Invasion 2001, when ECW and WCW invaded the WWE. But first, let me introduce to you my co-host, Conrad Thompson. How you doing today, Conrad?
Man, I'm excited to be here. This is probably the most discussed and dissected angle in wrestling history. But usually when people are breaking it down, they're talking about it from the outside. Fans giving their 2 cents, or maybe someone like Bruce Pritchard or Jim Ross or even Eric Bischoff commenting on it. But you're there in the middle of it, probably at the peak of your career. This is going to be fun. We've never talked about it from your perspective. So I'm looking forward to today's show.
So am I, my friend.
Well, chat me up. Did you watch any WCW at all? I mean, I know that you ultimately signed with the WWF, and I know there's a famous story of you and Rick and you asking his advice, but had you kept up with anything that happened on their program?
Well, I started watching pro wrestling in late 1998, probably early 1998, and I was watching both WWF and WCW, and I noticed there was a huge ratings war. Wrestling was popular, the most popular point in its history, more popular than ever before, and probably ever, period.
Yeah.
And so there was a huge buzz going on in pro wrestling, and it drew my interest. That ratings war is what drew me into pro wrestling.
In the old days, the sort of fantasy warfare was a big deal. Even here in the Attitude Era, you would go to the grocery stores and whatnot, and you would see all the wrestling magazines, the after magazines, as we call them. And it would be, hey, what would happen if Sting fought the Undertaker? Or what would happen if Steve Austin fought Goldberg? So this had sort of been fantasy booked by wrestling fans and wrestling writers for years and years. When you were actually in the business, was there anybody on the WCW side of things you thought, man, I'd like to work a match with that guy?
Well, at the time, there are plenty of guys that I wanted to work with. Hulk Hogan, Ric Flair, just because of their name alone. I mean,
yeah,
they were household names. But the performance level of guys that I wanted to perform against was Eddie Guerrero, Chris Benoit, and Booker T. Those guys drew my interest more than anybody else.
And of course, Eddie Guerrero and Benoit make their way over before WCW goes down, but Booker T is probably the guy who stands heads and shoulders above everybody else who came over. And you're kind of you're in a weird spot here. You're a de facto babyface, because even though you've really tried to be a heel, You're a loyal WWF soldier against these evil invaders. And being a babyface isn't something we had seen a lot of from you at this point in the WWF. Were you comfortable with that role change and how that dynamic changes? Because I imagine it's not just, your quote unquote swagger and the way you approach the fans. It's your promos, it's your wrestling style, it's your opponent list, it's everything, right?
Yeah, it was a little weird, because it turned me baby immediately because of the invasion, WCW coming in, and I didn't really know how to act or what to do, but I just did my own thing and continued to be the Kurt Angle that I was, the same character. There was no other choice for me. I mean, I knew that I would have an opportunity to have a good run as a babyface in the future. I just didn't know it was starting now.
I'm excited to talk about how this thing got started. Let's start from the very beginning. It's July 2nd, which is just right around the corner here. Buff Bagwell and Booker T wrestle in the main event on Monday Night Raw for the WCW title, and the crowd completely turns on it, changing everything. Did you have any sort of inclination as to what the plans were going to be before Vince scrapped it here after this match?
I had no idea. They had so many things going on at the time. WCW, ECW eventually came in. WWE. Vince had his hands in everything, and I think that he was holding off on telling the wrestlers what they were going to do week by week because he didn't know what we were going to do. Things were changing so much and adapting. You just had to wait and see what was going to happen that week.
It's so fascinating to go back and look at this stuff at the time, because you're exactly right. ECW's going down. WCW's going down. Vince had not too long ago gone public. He's also, as crazy as this sounds, dabbling in professional football with the whole XFL thing, and he's losing his ass there. He's on the heels of the biggest WrestleMania ever, WrestleMania 17. But now The Rock's off to make a movie. His bankable babyface, the biggest revenue generator in the history of professional wrestling, Steve Austin, has now cooled off because he's a bad guy. There's an incredible amount of stress and pressure on Vince McMahon in this era. And I think he went to, well, what do we know will definitely give us a shot in the arm? Hey, this fantasy thing that the magazines have been booking for 30 years, right?
Well, I didn't know who was going to face when WCW came in.
Sure.
It was really difficult to know what was going to happen next. I just didn't know I was going to turn babyface and carry the company on my shoulders for one of the biggest programs in the history of pro wrestling.
It's so unbelievable when you think about that. I mean, you're really, you're not green, but you're not exactly an old, grizzled veteran yet. And he's looking for, hey, I got to hit the panic button. And he hits the Kurt Angle button. The two designated leaders of the WWF side here are Stone Cold Steve Austin and Kurt Angle. And well, Buff Bagwell's completely out of the company after his match against Booker T, and he's fired not long after this television. Let's start with that. Do you remember ever having any interaction with Buff? I know that those who know him absolutely love him and think the world of him. But for whatever reason, his time here in the company was not for long. Did you have any interaction with Buff that you recall?
I met with him, I spoke with him briefly. He was a real nice guy. He seemed really cool. Unfortunately, his performance against Booker T that night when they started up the WCW and had that big match at the end of the night, he didn't perform very well. And he wasn't in good shape, not in good ring shape. He blew up early and the match wasn't really good. It was actually pretty bad. And I know he got fired soon after that, but I was told the reason he got fired was because his mother called in sick to the company because he couldn't go to a house show because he felt sick. And he had his mother call the company. I think that was the last straw that broke the camel's back. And, that's when Buff was let go. So I'm not sure how true that was, but that's what I was told.
I think there's another story out there. And again, I don't know what's real and what's not, but I think there's another story out there about Hurricane Helms and a water bottle. There's so much about the Buff Bagwell story that doesn't really add up. I think you could make an argument and again, this isn't a popular one, but I think you could make an argument that Buff maybe got a raw deal. It feels like a lot of guys over the years have been given a lot of second chances and third chances and fourth chances, and they've screwed up and they've had an opportunity to come back. But it feels like Bagwell here, man, that's it. And considering how quote unquote over he was with WCW, it feels like he was worth another look. Wouldn't you agree?
Oh yeah. I thought he was very talented in WCW. I thought he did a tremendous job with his character, his wrestling, his look. He was a big star, and I think the company could have benefited greatly. The WWE could have benefited greatly from Buff Bagwell. He was an incredible talent, and I have a lot of respect for him.
Let's keep it going here, and let's talk about the other pieces of this crazy chessboard that we're about to venture upon. We talked about how Steve Austin's hurt and he's the big bankable baby face. We talked about how The Rock has now gone off to make a movie. You're the other leader here, but you're sort of banged up too. Don't you have a meniscus and a tailbone thing going on?
Yes, I had a meniscus tear in my knee, cartilage problem. I just had to have surgery. I would have been out a week. That's about it. But I was nursing my back injury. That was a cracked tailbone with my match against Shane McMahon and King of the Ring street fight. And that was the hard one. That's the one that I was nursing at the time. And I was trying to be careful not to re-injure it.
I feel strongly that saving money is important. If it's not something we worry about now, boy, we are really going to worry about it later. And I want to help you get out of debt faster and do it with cheaper monthly payments. I'm talking to you if you're in a 30-year loan. Now is the time to take years off of your loan. We're routinely helping our listeners cut 5, 10, even 15 years off their loan. And you can do this without perfect credit with no money out of pocket. You've just got to start at savewithconrad.com. So very quickly, we start to come up with these out of the ring ideas. How quickly do you, Steve, and Vince find instant chemistry on TV? Did you know just in like pre-tapes and walking through it, or does it actually have to happen before you realize, oh shit, we're onto something?
It just happened. I mean, Vince decided to put us together because we were injured and we were no good to the company for performance wise. And Vince didn't want us sitting at home. We were his two biggest stars, and he wanted to utilize us in a positive manner. So Vince decided to have pre-tapes of Austin, me, and Vince, where we would be doing some funny, entertaining stuff. And I thought it was a great call on Vince's part. The chemistry was unbelievable. We didn't even know we had chemistry until we did it. We didn't practice or anything. It was just Vince would bring up an idea that day and say, hey, this is what we want to do. This is what we want to get done. This is the topic. Kurt, you start, I'll chime in. Austin, you chime in and say your thing. So it was mainly ad-libbed. It wasn't scripted much. It was just talked about, and we would do it. And the thing is, at the beginning, we were laughing so hard halfway through the pre-tape that the pre-tape would get ruined. And Vince was pissed. He's like, listen, you son of a bitches laugh anymore, I'm fining you $2,000 for every time you laugh. And it was like, okay, we'll get serious about this, Vince. But it was just so damn funny. Here in Austin, his personality is so incredible, and he has so much talent ad-libbing, and he's one of the funniest guys I've ever met. Austin was so entertaining doing those pre-tapes. So is Vince. I had so much fun doing it. It was the funnest time in my career.
I got to ask, when you're doing these, how much of these segments is totally scripted and how much is just ad-libbed?
It's 10% scripted, 90% ad-libbed. It wasn't. And I was scared to death because I didn't have a lot of experience. And I was like, when I started, I got all scripts, I studied them, and I have a photographic mind, so I could read word for word and study the scripts and say exactly what it said on paper. And here he's telling me this is an idea, just go do it. And I was like, holy shit, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to ad-lib, but I picked up on it pretty quickly. And I didn't realize I could ad-lib. And, Austin and Vince helped me a lot though. They helped me out quite a bit.
Were there any other producers involved in those skits or segments, or was it just the three of you?
Brian Gewirtz was there, the writer, but Vince was mainly running it. He's always been in charge of our pre-tapes, especially with Austin, Vince, and myself and Deborah. So, Vince always took control of those. He always wanted to be the director of them, and rightfully so. Vince has a great eye for this stuff, and he knows what he wants to accomplish in every pre-tape.
ECW is going to join the Invasion, and it's going to be booked, the Invasion show itself. The main event is scheduled to be yourself, Kane, The Undertaker, Steve Austin, and Chris Jericho. What'd you think of that team?
Oh, that's an all-star team. That's one of the best teams you could combine together. It was, it was a dream team, and we were going to pair up against the WCW, ECW guys, and it was going to be a big show, a big match, 10-man tag.
Let's run through that. It's DDP, Booker T, the Dudleys, and Rhyno. Obviously Booker T and DDP, former WCW world champions. Rhyno, former ECW world champion. The Dudleys, one of the most decorated tag teams of all time. But I think when fans drew up this sort of fantasy invasion angle, there's guys like Goldberg and Ric Flair and Kevin Nash and Scott Hall.
Hulk Hogan.
Yeah, Scott Steiner. We don't really get that. There's no Sting here. So it does feel a little bit like we're carting out the WWF best and some really good WCW and ECW guys. Not to disparage those guys. I'm just saying they're not the long-term headliner that a guy like Sting was, or Flair or Hogan, to your point. Were you disappointed, or did you know? Because we look at things from a fan perspective, and we look at, oh man, I have so many great memories with that guy. You look at things from a wrestling perspective, and you're thinking, oh, I can have a really good match with this guy and that guy. We don't, as fans, automatically think, oh, that's going to make a great match. We sometimes get excited about, oh, it's this name versus that name. Does that make sense?
Right. I understand that. But, at the time we didn't have the big time superstars from WCW. We had a few of them, DDP and Booker T were, pretty damn big stars. But I understand what you're saying. We didn't have the Goldbergs and the Ric Flairs and Hulk Hogan's. But we took what we had and we made the best of it. That's all we could do. And those were the top stars in the company at that particular time that we had signed. So we made the best of the situation.
Let's talk about, when you see that cast of characters. You've mentioned Booker T. Who out of the rest of the guys excited you as far as an in-ring opponent? DDP, Bubba Ray, Devon, Rhyno?
Rhyno did. I enjoyed Rhino's work. He was always very intense. Great technician. I really liked his performance. He reminded me a lot of a Goldberg, to a certain extent. And his wrestling was quite the same. And he was a very dominating wrestler in ECW. And I thought that I had a lot of respect for Rhyno. I thought he was a great talent.
So let's talk about just where you are overall on the programming at the time. On our build here, again, even though it is a hot angle, we don't really have the physicality that we might normally because you and Austin are bumped up. So we're doing a lot of comedy, as we've touched on with Steve, yourself, Vince, and Deborah. In hindsight, do you think that this, and Lord, I enjoyed both versions, but we've seen two versions of Kurt Angle, really, right? We've seen the wrestling machine, the badass killer. I'm going to fucking do what I want. I'm going to impose my will on you and you can't stop it. And then we've also seen, for lack of a better word, the geeky, corny Kurt Angle. And I realize that that's you playing a character. Both are you playing a character, very humble, nice man in real life, But did you think that was going to hurt your quote unquote drawing ability, or do some of the old timers, some of the veterans in the locker room come over and say, hey, I know you hadn't been here for very long, but maybe that's not a good idea. Does somebody put a bug in your ear or make you second guess being silly and cheesy?
Well, at the time that's what Vince wanted me to do. He wanted me to be funny and goofy and nerdy. And his explanation was, listen, he even did a pre-tape with Austin where Austin came in and said, Vince, listen, we need to get rid of Angle. He's a dork. And Vince said, yes, but he's a dangerous dork. So that's what Vince was trying to build, was this dangerous dork that fans took seriously in the ring, but didn't take quite seriously outside the ring. And that's the character that Vince wanted to produce for me. Obviously, in the future, a couple years later, Vince decided he didn't want that anymore. He wanted the wrestling machine Kurt Angle. So I was just doing what Vince McMahon wanted me to do. And I enjoy playing both characters.
Right. Let's keep it going here. And let's talk a little bit about Booker and yourself. You're doing the main event on Raw on July 9th. It's for the WCW title. Booker's going to retain. And I guess it makes sense. It's Atlanta, which is the home of WCW, but it's also the city where you won the Olympic gold medal, and you come up short here. There's some rumor.
That's a first in Atlanta. I won the 1995 World Championships there.
Oh, I didn't know that.
1996 gold medal there in the Olympics. And now I'm going for the WCW championship. It's the only time I got beat in Atlanta for a world title. And unfortunately, I lost the Booker T.
It's unbelievable that, you know, you could beat every wrestler in the world in 95 and 96, but that damn Booker T, he eluded you.
Damn it. That son of a bitch.
So chat me up. Did you hear anybody in the back? I mean, there's been lots of rumor and innuendo that some of the top guys in the WWF didn't feel like they should be putting over WCW guys. Did anybody sort of complain or gripe and say, "Oh, I can't believe they're doing that to you"?
If that was true, that's rubbish, because if that's what they thought, I didn't hear it, but if that's what they thought, they're not thinking the right thing for pro wrestling.
That's right.
Pro Wrestling 101 is about making each other. So I'll give you an example. If I wrestle a guy 10 times and I beat him 10 times, I beat a nobody.
Yep.
If he beats me 5 times and I beat him 5 times, I beat a somebody. We need to make each other. We need to elevate each other. It's the only way it works. That's how you benefit in pro wrestling. That's how every wrestler gets over. And that's what you need to do. And I didn't have a problem putting Booker T over. I didn't care he came from WCW. The WCW guys need to get over. They're in the company now. So everybody has to work together and get each other over.
One of the original ideas for this invasion was we're going to create our own WCW company, a spinoff. This is before the ECW spinoff. And Jim Ross even holds a bunch of meetings at a hotel there in Atlanta, one talent after another. He's making calls to some of the other talent. There's even some loose advertising out there that didn't get pulled in time where they were teasing a new WCW show. And they were really gung-ho on, we're going to create our own second company. Now, of course, they got cold feet after everything that happened with the invasion happened the way it did. And instead, they tried it a few years later with ECW. And I guess you could say it worked for a little while, but ultimately it was a failed experiment. Do you think in hindsight, as a wrestling fan, someone who was watching both products in 98, that a WCW freestanding company owned and operated and managed by Vince McMahon, just like he tried with ECW, could the WCW version have worked here in 2001?
I don't know. The fans are so smart. They know the WWE purchased the WCW.
Yes.
When there's a ratings war and there are two companies with two different owners, the fans get excited. They want to see that. They want to see and compare the companies. But when one company buys up every other company, the excitement is gone. It's no longer the real WCW or the real ECW. It's the WWE's version of WCW or the WWE's version of ECW. And I think that's the reason why it didn't work either time.
Let's talk about the now famous promo that Steve Austin cut in the locker room. He's got Vince, Jericho, Kane, Undertaker, and yourself.
Oh, yeah.
And Vince is giving a pep talk, and Austin agrees with it the whole time, just repeating the words that he's saying. How hard is it to keep a straight face during all this?
It was so hard. I think that pre-tape we actually did 3 or 4 times because people were laughing. So, Austin was just on fire. Vince didn't have anything scripted. He was coming up with this ad-libbed stuff, and Austin was just repeating him. And Austin was in incredible stone cold fashion. He is one of the funniest guys I've ever met, and he's one of the most entertaining individuals. He can do everything. He's an ass kicker. He's a beer drinker, a redneck. You know, he's Stone Cold Steve Austin, but he can be a funny son of a bitch too.
In hindsight, do you think the comedy hurt the quote unquote heat on this angle? You know, and I know that me and you have discussed this a little bit, but I want to double down for just a minute. There's a saying in wrestling, and I can't wait to get your 2 cents. Funny doesn't draw money. And I know some guys would disagree with that, and they argue that, well, that's not the case. And you are one of the comedic geniuses of wrestling. You with your execution on some of Brian's words and ideas and concepts are still being talked about to this day. Where do you stand on the whole funny doesn't draw money?
I think that funny does draw money to an extent. I don't think that it's going to draw the big time money.
It's not main event worthy.
No, it's not main event worthy. You need to be taken seriously. The reason I think I was able to do it is because I was a real badass in real life and the fans knew I was. So, you know, I could still draw big time money because the fans took me seriously in the ring, even though I was being goofy and funny outside the ring. And I can't think of any other reason than that, how I was able to get away with it for so long.
I'm curious, when you said, I sort of freestyled, it's not main event, and then you agreed, and Austin's here doing comedy, trying to sell the main event of the biggest, most bankable idea that wrestling fans have clamored to for decades. And they're doing comedy. In hindsight, it had to hurt the drawing ability of this match, didn't it?
I think a little bit. Back then I wasn't educated on what drew money and what didn't draw money.
Yeah.
So I was just doing what I was told. But I think that Austin, I think he wanted to take a break for being the top babyface. I think he wanted to show a different side of himself. And I think that he was every bit as vocal about doing these pre-tapes as Vince was. I think Austin wanted to take a break from Stone Cold Steve Austin and wanted to show a different side of himself.
Let's mention too, I just want to briefly run through what the buys were and what the business is looking like here in 2001. We've talked about this a lot this year, but I just want to add context. The Royal Rumble in New Orleans in January had 16,000 fans. It was a sellout, and it sold 625,000 pay-per-views. The next month in February, they're in Las Vegas for No Way Out. It's another sellout, 15,000 plus on hand, 590,000 buys. So down a little bit, but that's expected. Royal Rumble's always the big one. And April 1st, it is the Mac Daddy. 67,925 fans sell out WrestleMania 17. Over 1 million buys. 1,040,000 is the number of pay-per-view buys. Backlash in Chicago is not a sellout, but near 15,592. But the buys go all the way down to 375,000. And that trend would continue in Sacramento for Judgment Day. 13,363 fans, but only 405,000 fans buy the show. King of the Ring in 01, it's East Rutherford, New Jersey. We've recently talked about another sellout, 17,000 fans, but 445,000 people buy it. Now I'm setting the stage here just so we can sort of go through the arc. 620, 590, 1 million, 375, 400, 445. And even with this poor execution, and even with a depleted roster, and even though we don't have the quote unquote tippy top talent, Invasion in Cleveland, Ohio does 17,000 fans and it sells 775,000 pay-per-views. Even when we all agree, boy, this was not very good. People were curious, Kurt. They wanted to see what would happen when the WWF fought WCW. SummerSlam the next month is going to keep the trend going. 565,000. While it's still down, it's up. It's almost back to the Royal Rumble level, but it's even down from No Way Out, but it's a sellout. But then, man, it falls off a cliff. 350, 325, 450, 315. And I mean, one of these pay-per-views, the one in Greensboro, North Carolina, the home of Starrcade, only has 9,000 fans. When they go back to California for a pay-per-view, after they were just in Sacramento and San Jose with sellouts, San Diego only draws 11,000 fans. So we're way, way, way down on the heels of Invasion. So it feels like even if we didn't have the right build, you had the audience because the premise was strong. Fair to say?
Yeah, I think that I think that WWE could have went a little further with Invasion.
Yeah.
I think if they would have continued on, they would have made a lot more money because it was very intriguing to the fans. There's no doubt about that. For some reason, they wanted to see WCW versus the WWE, and I'm not surprised. I am surprised that Vince ended it abruptly, that he didn't continue on with it. But I know that we have pay-per-views, like SummerSlam, that's more of its own theme than it would be, what we called it, SummerSlam Invasion. So
yeah,
there are certain things that we don't change or we don't adapt to it because we have these prestigious pay-per-views, at least the 4 top pay-per-views a year. That's Royal Rumble, SummerSlam, WrestleMania, and Survivor Series. And I don't think that Vince wanted to tap into those with the Invasion angle.
Let's keep it going here and talk about the match itself. Well, wait, before we do, I want to mention the go home edition of Raw as we head into this Invasion pay-per-view. You're in the ring. Steve Austin is going to be the last guy out for a big brawl. And when his music hits, it's one of the biggest pops anybody's ever heard. Do you remember that day? I mean, are there big pops that really resonate with you all these years later when you think about the big reactions and the adrenaline and the rush that must be for you? Is that on the list?
Oh yeah. That Austin that night, that was the loudest pop I've ever heard. And rightfully so. I mean, Austin's the biggest babyface in the history of the company. I mean, he's drawn more money than any other wrestler in history. He is the man. And that night he proved it. That was the loudest pop. It was so obnoxious. It was the loudest thing I've ever heard in my life.
It's something to go out of your way to see if you want to see a monster pop. And now let's talk about the match itself. It's Team ECW/WCW. Of course, they're the Alliance versus Team WWF. And Kurt, the pop you get for your entrance here on the Invasion show has to be one of the biggest of your career at this point, right? It's your first big babyface pop.
Definitely, without a doubt. I was pleasantly surprised about it.
Yeah, I mean, at this point, fans really had lived to boo you, and now, man, they're on their feet in a big way. But I'm curious about how a match like this is put together. So let's remind everybody, we get 29 minutes and 3 seconds. It's the Dudleys, Rhyno, and DDP teaming with Booker T to take on Steve Austin, Kurt Angle, Chris Jericho, The Undertaker, and Kane. It's a 10-man tag. And I don't know shit about wrestling, but what I've heard a lot of is, boy, if it's an 8-man tag or a 10-man tag, it's going to be a clusterfuck. How difficult is it?
It most likely will be.
How tough is it to put together a 10-man tag?
It's the toughest thing to do, especially 10-man. 8-man, 6-man, those are tough enough, but 10-man is even tougher. The thing is, you hear that saying, make sure you get your shit in.
Yeah.
That didn't happen here that night. The guys were playing toward the match, what was best for the match. And these guys didn't want to get their shit in. And most of these guys understood, when you get your shit in and you lose, it makes you look that much weaker because your shit is your trademark moves, your finish, your false finishes. You get that stuff in and you lose. It makes you look like even a bigger loser.
Right.
And these guys were working toward the match. They wanted to make the match the best match possible. So we layered the match and everybody was on cue with each other. We all agreed with everything. Nobody had an attitude. Nobody tried to get their shit in, quote unquote. It was all about building this match to the best match it could be. And it was an awesome match. For a 10-man tag, this was about as good as you can get.
You hadn't worked Diamond Dallas Page at all at this point, right? I mean, you had the singles match with Booker T. I think you had done some stuff with Rhyno by this point. But I'm curious, for whatever reason, DDP had earned a reputation amongst a lot of other talent that he wanted to script everything out. And I think he used to write it in a BlackBerry, and I think Undertaker maybe ribbed him about it one time, and it became in fashion to rib him about this. These days, everybody scripts everything. He was ahead of his time. Right. Did he have that kind of heat with the rest of the guys at that point? Did you see a problem with him wanting to lay everything out, or did you just find that not to be true, that wasn't actually the case?
Well, I didn't work directly with him, so I didn't know. I heard about it. Actually, Chris Benoit told me a story where DDP scripted a match where it was 12 pages long type. And Chris was like, you know what, screw this. He tore it up and he left the arena. And DDP was looking for him to go over the match, and he couldn't find Chris anywhere. And Chris didn't show up till 5 minutes before the match started, so that DDP couldn't have his scripted match. Chris basically carried him through a match, I guess, is what happened. So Chris was trying to rib him back by not allowing the match to be scripted. And that's what I was told by Chris. I don't know how true it is, but I actually believe Chris because he's been honest with everything he's ever said to me before that.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah.
Well, talking about your teammates, Steve Austin, obviously biggest draw in the business. The Undertaker is like the godfather of wrestling. And then there's Kane, who we know is the mayor, one of the nicest guys ever. He'd been on top since he debuted with this character in late 97. And then there's yourself and Chris Jericho. And it feels like both of you guys are trying to really, for lack of a better word, make a name for yourself. You feel like the next big thing, like maybe Steve Austin and The Rock, that was, the page before, but now it's our time. Now it's Kurt Angle and Chris Jericho. We're going to make Chris Jericho a made man here in a few months at Vengeance. I don't think anybody necessarily would have predicted that at this point, but still we recognize, hey, there's something about these boys. This is going to be something. And he just had that phenomenal tag team match with Chris Benoit against Austin and Triple H. So Jericho has big things planned, and you're sort of the guy who's been there very quickly, the world champion in your first year, best rookie year ever. And it feels like maybe, and I don't know, I'm asking, was there any professional, I don't know, weirdness between you and Jericho? Because Jericho had been around, and you're just, as soon as you debut, boom, they put the rocket ship on you. And Jericho's experience in the company at this point had not been that. It felt a little start and stop. Do you think there was a little bit of, and I'm not trying to be ugly, professional jealousy on Jericho's side? Like, wait a minute, how the fuck does this guy keep getting these opportunities? Could you feel any of that, or did I just make all that up?
No, I felt it. And it was, it rung true. Chris never talked about it, but I'm sure he thought about that, because there's no doubt, we both started around the same time. And, he came in from WCW and I started in WWE. Some of my first programs were with Chris Jericho, and it seemed like I elevated a lot quicker. And I was very, 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 very new to the business.
Yeah.
Chris been wrestling for, at least a decade.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I was just surprised that they didn't elevate Chris as quickly as they elevated me. And, for whatever reason it was, maybe it's because he came in from WCW. I don't know. But I felt the same way about Chris Benoit too. I thought that they held off on Chris for a little bit. I thought they forgot about him for a little bit. I even talked to Chris about that. And those two guys, they have all the talent in the world. I always thought that they would make it to the very top, and they did.
Yep.
It just took them a little bit longer, and I'm not sure why.
Meltzer would say of this match, everyone worked hard and this was good, but not the caliber of most WWF main events. Austin and Angle in particular got huge reactions when they came out. By the way, let's appreciate what we're talking about there. A relative new guy to the company is in the same sentence as Steve Austin with crazy reactions. That's where you were at this point. Match would have been better served being a little shorter as it dragged in the middle. DDP did a diamond cutter to Angle, but Undertaker saved. Rhyno accidentally gored Booker. Undertaker gave Page a choke slam, but Page got away from the last ride. So Undertaker gave referee Charles Robinson the last ride. Austin is on the floor, selling his knee big time with a fake EMT guy helping him out. For some reason, this was never acknowledged. I can't believe something so important was missed. So it appeared they now have the mindset that if they ignore important parts of the match, the fans will think, aha, the announcers aren't even talking about it, even though we are seeing it, so it must be real. They need to be thinking about the other 95% of the audience. Jericho came off the apron and knocked Rhyno through the table. Jericho ended up getting hurt while Undertaker and Page brawled to the back. Guess Undertaker isn't willing to lay down, and they didn't want him around for the finish. I guess because it wouldn't look good for him to not go after Austin, and he wasn't going to be laid out. Angle slam on Bubba, an ankle lock on Booker, but Booker kicked the ankle off into referee Mike Chioda, so he was down. Vince grabs the WWF title belt to throw to Austin, but Shane gets the belt and hits Vince with it. Remember, Shane is representing the Alliance. Angle knocked Shane out of the ring and gave Booker the angle slam and had him in the ankle lock. Booker was tapping, but there's no referee. So Austin made his miraculous comeback, throwing Chioda in the ring, but then he kicked Angle and gave him a stunner and put Booker on top and ordered the ref to count. The show ended with Austin in the ring drinking beer with Shane, Stephanie, and Heyman. 3.5 stars. Whew, a lot to unpack. What do you remember about this match?
I remember it was just crazy. I didn't even think about all the stuff that you were talking about. Austin being injured and them not mentioning it on TV, trying to get Undertaker out of the arena to protect them. There were just so many bells and whistles in this match. It could get quite confusing, but I thought the match was put together very well. And I thought it was, I thought that everybody performed at their very best, and it was as good as it could have been. I know that Meltzer felt that it wasn't that good, but I thought it was a 4-star match. I thought it was pretty damn good, especially with all the bells and whistles that we were going through.
It's an interesting creative decision, and it feels like the finish is what's gonna, in my opinion, is gonna turn off a lot of fans who felt like, hey man, I just bought the second biggest pay-per-view behind WrestleMania, and it's not SummerSlam and it's not Royal Rumble, but finally I'm getting this dream scenario. Even though all my stars aren't there and the build has been sort of silly and funny and haha, they kind of fucked them with this finish, did they not?
Without a doubt. Yes. That's one thing I did want to say that I didn't say before, but the finish did suck. I mean, not having the proper finish and, having Austin turn heel and
again, he turned heel again.
So, it was a little scary. I think Vince took a chance, and I'm not sure he hit a grand slam on this one. I think that he whiffed pretty hard. This was an opportunity to have a great finish, very structured finish, and something that would be memorable forever. And it wasn't. The finish was crappy. It really was.
Do you remember anything in particular about the match? Like who's calling the match, any miscommunications, anything you wished could have happened but didn't, anything like that?
No, I don't remember anything like that. I know that Undertaker was pretty much the one that was in control of the match. And, if anybody needed any assistance, Undertaker was there. So when he was in the ring, he called most of that match.
Talk to me a little bit about the way this thing's winding down. You guys come through the back, you're in Gorilla again, or you're in the locker room, you're in the backstage area. It's common for guys to get together and, all right, what'd you think? Hey man, good match, all that type of stuff. There is the come down after the match. We've seen it on TV at least, but in this instance, did Vince and everybody, Austin, Undertaker, was everybody like, hey man, we did it? Or people started looking around like, is that really what we should have did?
That was more of the more of the environment.
Yeah.
Did we really do the right thing? Yeah, because it just came off as it wasn't an exciting finish, and turning Austin heel again was just ridiculous, and I just felt like that there was an opportunity to have a great finish and a very memorable one, and it just didn't happen that night. And I think a lot of talent was a little confused about it.
We've often heard people say of Vince McMahon, well, Vince doesn't sell shit. The idea being, if Vince has a bad day, if it's a bad business day, if the company's losing money, if someone's quitting, if there's chaos, whatever, Vince will not sell it. If bad news comes his way, you'll never know it. In a moment like this, where maybe the trust of the talent and their confidence, maybe that's a better word, their confidence in the creative is questionable. Does Vince keep that iron chin? Like, nope, you just don't see what I see. We've just got to stick to it. Or can you almost see the wheel spinning in his mind? Like, fuck, that didn't go how I thought.
You know what? Honestly, you're never going to see Vince say, fuck, that didn't go off right.
Yeah.
He's pretty stubborn, and he sticks by his guns. And when he does something, he follows through with it and he backs it up. So Vince has never been sorry about anything in his life. He's always sure about what he does. There's no doubt about that.
With Rock gone, it's obvious that you and Steve are now positioned as the two top stars of the whole thing. But I'm curious from your perspective on a night where you got a crazy reaction, the biggest reaction you've ever had. In hindsight, you have to think some of that is probably because, well, I was teaming with Austin, the biggest guy in the business. So he's so over that by de facto, if I'm rubbing up against him, I am too. But now he is clearly on the other side. So in a cool way, you're now the top guy representing the WWF. And I would think that a guy like yourself is like, oh, that's great. I'm the top dog. But on the other hand, it's like, well, shit, I just got my biggest reaction and now I'm against him. How can I recreate that? How can I still be the baby face? How can I make sure they want to cheer or they want to boo the most cheered and celebrated guy ever? Is that added pressure to you or a welcome challenge?
It was a welcome challenge. There's no doubt about that. And added pressure as well, because, you know, Austin turning and me having to be the top baby face in the company. And I was in there less than 2 years in the company. I mean, you know, in the most important storyline in the company's history, and I'm the top baby face and facing Austin, I was scared to death. But, you know, was I comfortable? No, I wasn't by any means, but I had to be comfortable because it's an opportunity that only happens once in every 2 lifetimes.
Right.
You know, you're being handed the top baby face in the company role against the most popular wrestler of all time. And you're being told that you're the man now, and you got to follow through with it. If you're not comfortable and confident with it, you're gonna end up losing, and you're gonna lose everything. So I had to be comfortable, and I had to do what I had to do to make myself as successful as I could.
Let my family save your family some cash. You don't need perfect credit. You don't need money out of your pocket, but we will save you money. It's not a matter if, it's a matter of how much. SaveWithConrad.com. Let's talk a little bit about Steve Austin for a minute. He's often talked about how much he regrets turning heel. There's no doubt that he's a great worker both ways. But without his heel turn, probably not the top baby face. Did you prefer working Steve when he was the top heel and you were the top baby face, or when he was the top baby face and you were the top heel?
I actually liked working Steve when he was the heel.
Yeah.
He's so good at it. And, you know, he led me through the matches and just took control. And, you know, he was a great improviser. He knew how to kill time when we had to. He knew how to shorten time when we had to. He was a very underrated worker. People don't know how good he was in the ring because his character was so strong. He was the beer drinking, ass kicking, you know, redneck, but in the ring, he was every bit as good. And I enjoyed working him when he was a heel. He led me through the matches. It was pretty incredible.
Well, as a reminder, this Invasion show we're talking about is one of the highest drawing pay-per-views in wrestling history. 770,000 buys makes it the most purchased WWF pay-per-view not named WrestleMania ever. That means it was bigger than all the Royal Rumbles and all the SummerSlams. And in hindsight, I think fans will continue to talk about this as a major what if. And I can't help but think, what if the finish of the main event was different? In hindsight, Kurt, what would you have done? If you could go back in time, rebook the finish of this 10-man tag, what does it look like?
Well, you know what? It's so hard because you don't know what the plans were from Vince. You don't know what he was trying to accomplish. Was he trying to make WCW a formidable company that would stand forever, or was he trying to do it temporarily? That all depends on what I would do in that match. So in other words, I'm not sure what Vince's plans were for the company. Obviously, he changed his mind several times and didn't follow up on what he said he was going to do. So the match all depends on the direction they wanted to go with WCW, and I don't know which direction it was.
To me, it feels like you could have had a little bit of a story on your hands if you don't turn Austin right away. And I know they felt like they didn't have enough big names on the other side, but perhaps you turn on Austin and you go and join the alliance. I know in theory that doesn't make any sense.
That would have been more predictable.
Yeah.
Obviously I was a heel most of my career at that particular point. And, Austin was just, the biggest baby face of all time. So I think that Vince wanted to do something that would surprise the fans. And I'm pretty sure that was the reason why.
It just feels like you could have picked right back up where you left off and been like, well, Stephanie wooed me back over here or whatever.
Right,
and we're back to the races, but it didn't happen. Austin's a bad guy and it's not going to do big business. We're hoping to do big business next week, but before we talk about next week's topic, I want to do a couple of fan questions. Christian says, were you ever concerned about your spot when Vince brought WCW and ECW back? That's interesting, I guess, but whenever you hear there's going to be an influx of new talent, I'm sure some guys worry, oh, what about my spot? But at this point, that's probably not even crossing your mind, right?
It wasn't, but I will say this. The only time I get worried about my spot, I don't get worried while I'm wrestling, not while I'm performing. As long as I'm healthy, it's when you get injured and you're sitting at home and you're worried about what's going on with the company and how they're progressing and you're not progressing at all because you're home with injury. That's when I worry about my spot. Never worried about it while I was performing. Nobody was going to take my spot from WCW.
Let's do another one here. This is from Richie. He says, was the plan always to feud with Stone Cold after the comedy vignettes, or is it something that just naturally happened? That's an interesting question. Did you already know as you're doing the funny ha-ha, we're going to wind up working together? Or do you not know until closer to this show?
We didn't know. And Vince didn't let us know. I think that it just naturally happened. I think Vince said, hey, these guys have great chemistry together, working together. If I pair them up against each other, they'll probably have even better chemistry. And Vince was absolutely right. So I don't think it was planned. I think it was brought up in the moment. And Vince decided that he wanted to pit Stone Cold Steve Austin versus Kurt Angle.
Elite S. Chris says, what was the vibe in the locker room at this point on the Invasion angle? That's an interesting question. Were the guys afterwards, not the guys involved in the match, but the other guys thinking, oh, this thing's dead on arrival? Or were they excited to be involved themselves, do you think?
I think everybody was excited, but they just didn't know what was going on. They were very confused. Things were changing all the time. WCW is supposed to be aired on Raw every week, and that changed. And just everything was changing all the time. And, Vince was bringing in ECW, and there were just so many facets going on at the same time that we were confused of what they were trying to accomplish. And, obviously it was the invasion angle that they wanted to try to accomplish, but I don't know how long they wanted to do it for or what it was for. I just know that Vince purchased the WCW and wanted to continue on with it. And it just didn't pan out.
Well, what is going to pan out is some delicious snacks over at physicallyfit.com. Kurt, every time I log into my social media, I'm overwhelmed with photos of people holding up that bag you're holding right there. It's chicken snacks. And boys and girls, you can get it right now at physicallyfit.com. Click on the where to buy button, and you'll probably find 3 or 4 stores within driving distance of you. I've got one just 2 miles away. But what I do is I save myself some cash, and I click on that order now online button at the bottom. They're all just $9.99, but when you use our promo code AnglePod, you'll save 20% off your entire order. Now, let me explain. That's not 20% off one item. That's 20% off everything you order. So buy one for yourself, buy one for the family, buy one to share. This has become a real big hit at my office. I feel like I have a UPS delivery every week from you now, Kurt. People are loving the buffalo wing and the blue cheese. I think you've told me that's the healthiest option of all, right?
Yes, that's the one that has the lowest amount of sugar and the highest protein. It's an incredible. We have 11 different flavors. We have plant protein, organic plant protein. We have chicken protein. They're both phenomenal tasting, 11 different flavors, and you can order those at physicallyfit.com.
Let's run through the flavors. If you're looking for organic plant protein, brown sugar cinnamon with pretzels. You've also got honey mustard with pretzel pieces, sour cream and onion with bagel pieces and rice sticks. And then, of course, spicy buffalo and blue cheese. And that's all organic plant protein. And then if you're looking for chicken snacks, well, that's easy. You got buffalo wing and blue cheese. You've also got pizza, jalapeno ranch with peanuts and almonds, cinnamon swirl with pretzels, sweet barbecue with honey roasted peanuts, sriracha and peanuts and almonds. And of course, your favorite Kung Pao with dry roasted peas and pretzels. The Kung Pao is pretty spicy. I like the sriracha, but it feels like the runaway winner online is buffalo wing and blue cheese, dude.
That's my second favorite. I enjoy those too. I love the spicy ones. Those are the ones that I cling to the most. My kids love the cinnamon swirl and the cinnamon and brown sugar ones. They absolutely love those.
Every kid loves them. Check them out if you haven't already. Physicallyfit.com. Click on where to buy at the top, and then you'll see it at the bottom. Order online. Don't forget that special promo code AnglePod. You'll save 20% off. I want to mention the bags are $9.99. You're going to get them for 20% off, so just under $8. But there's 7 servings per bag. This is not like a single serving deal. So you're going to be like $1 a holler here. It is fantastic. Can't recommend it enough. I've not seen one negative review. So try it for yourself at physicallyfit.com. And if you haven't already, try KurtAnglebrand.com. Kurt's got, I don't know, everything under the sun for sale over there, dude. You're doing autographs, you're doing cowboy hats, you're doing milk cartons. What aren't you doing?
I'm doing birthday cards. I'm doing the whole ball of wax. I have t-shirts, everything. So, you go to KurtAnglebrand.com and put your order in, and I'll be sending it to you. You can also, if you have any extra photos of me and you together, or you want something signed that you have, go ahead and send it to the address that's on the website. Send a small donation with it, and I'll personalize for you and send it back to you.
That's a cool deal. Not a lot of guys are offering that. You usually have to meet them at some sort of convention, and even a lot of those guys don't allow mail-ins. Kurt's doing it for you. KurtAnglebrand.com. If you've got an old title belt, you want him autographed, maybe you made him at a convention or a WrestleCon or whatever, you can send him that picture and he'll autograph that. So nothing cooler hanging around your little home office than a picture of you and Kurt that he signed. People are going to want to know, how'd you do that? And tell them, well, you listen to the Kurt Angle Show. We appreciate all the feedback, and we have a very special episode next week. I don't even really want to tease it. I would rather it just be a surprise, but let me assure you, you will not be disappointed. And in 2 weeks, we're going to be back talking all about winning the gold medal. It's finally happening. We're going to get August kicked off in a big way. Check this schedule out. August 1st, it's Ask Kurt Anything. August 8th, it's Milkamania. August 15th, it's SummerSlam 2001. August 22nd, it's SummerSlam 2000. And then, of course, we're going to wind up the month of August talking about leaving the WWE. So much good stuff happening here on the Kurt Angle Show. Appreciate you guys' support. Kurt, every time I look, we're in the top 10. How about that, man? People are loving the Kurt Angle Show.
I want to absolutely thank the fans for that. You guys have made my show a success, and I can't thank you enough. So much gratitude.
Thank you guys for all you do for us. Tell a friend about your new favorite wrestling podcast. Tell them about the Kurt Angle Show. We'll see you next week right here on the Kurt Angle Show.
Oh, it's true.
Hey, it's Conrad Thompson. Thanks for checking out the podcast here on YouTube. Be sure to hit the subscribe button and the notifications bell so you get a notice anytime we upload some new content. And go save yourself some money right now. If you're in a 30-year loan or you have credit card debt, it's not a matter of if I can save you money. It's a matter of how much. Find out right now for free at SaveWithConrad.com.